So welcome to part 1 of 2. How do we stop from tearing ourselves apart, resolving conflict in our communities with curiosity and nonviolence? Today is November 3rd, 2022. And I meant to start playing this before we got going, but this is, I'll just play a few pieces of this. So I'm going to play this on my Spotify. It's called Loosen by Ali Halpert. And it's a really beautiful song. And I'll stop share to play it for you. And I think if you can just take a moment and try and ground a little bit while you're listening, that'll be good. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. As you can see, Ainsley is here with us. I'm so excited.
Hi, Ainsley.
Yes, my first time co-facilitating one of these, so should be fun. We've had a lot of fun planning it, I think. Let's see. Thank you. I love that song. I play it like almost daily because I need the reminder.
I would be happy to buy an album first.
Yeah, Ali Halpert. She has one album, so there you go.
Okay, let me ask you more details.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll send that in the email and I can text it to you as well.
Thanks.
Great. So some tech info, which I'm realizing I should have done before the song. So please go ahead and mute yourself unless you're actively speaking, or just stay silent while not engaging in the conversation. I think we're going to be fully on Zoom today. So I think people were maybe stayed home because of the weather, which is totally understandable. um, but yeah, so we could really use a designated monitor to monitor the chat box. Is anyone interested in doing that? Lena or Patrick, maybe? Or Molly? Patrick? All right, cool. So anytime you see something pop up in the chat, whenever it's appropriate, you can just be like, hey, such and such said such and such, and that'll because I feel like when we're facilitating, we often miss that kind of thing. Do you want to keep going with the
Yeah. So if you'd like live captions, they'll pop up as people are speaking. You can click on the 3 dots that say more and then live transcript, then click enable. And we'll be using the chat box during the meeting as one option for participating. To use the chat box, you click on the 3 dots that say more, then click on chat and you can type where it says type message here. To close the chat box, you click on the down arrow in the top left of box and then click close. The other option is to raise your hand to speak which the Zoom monitor will be looking for. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
There will be
we
a
actually
moment.
skipped that. We will not be using a Google document today. And we will not be in person. So great.
So
yeah.
may I say that Molly has put in the chat room that she hasn't been feeling well today, so she'll be there with us as much as possible.
Okay, great. I'm always a fan of taking care of ourselves. So do whatever your body needs to do, Molly. Yeah, so just make yourselves as comfortable as possible. As you know, we strive to be an actively accessible space. The masks does not matter right now. Low scent does not matter right now. So Zoom, as we know, can be hard to engage with for a really long time. So if you need to turn off your camera, leave and come back, whatever you need to do, please feel welcome to do so. And if at any point your access needs are not met or you need something in order to feel more comfortable, please feel welcome to do whatever you need to do, including standing up, stretching, leaving, using the bathroom. You can also put it in the chat if you'd like, and Patrick will let us know. And if you need anything in the moment, just let us know. So we're going to do intros, and the connection game is actually from last time. But do you want to?
Yeah. So my name is Ainsley. I use she, her pronouns, and I have brown hair. It comes about to my waist. I have olive toned skin, hazel eyes, and I'm wearing a yellowish orange sweater and black leggings and a gray skirt. And my access needs are met. And I'm arriving here today grateful. And I just hope to get out of this workshop, a discussion about conflict resolution, and hopefully people come away with maybe something from it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I'll go next, and then y'all can share your name, pronouns, what you're wearing or look like, your access needs, i.e. what you need to be comfortable in the space. If they're not met, you can say your needs are met. And then a word or phrase that describes how you're arriving, and a sentence or phrase about what you hope to get out of today's workshop. So I'm Anna. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm wearing a red boat neck kind of three-quarter sleeve sweater, and a black choker, red earrings, and I have kind of like a, I don't know, classy vampire look going. Was what I was going for with the makeup. Red lips and a cat eye look. I have short buzzed hair, and I'm wearing, I already said red earrings, and I'm light skinned. So yeah, my access needs today. I'll probably need to eat a little bit. I had something to eat before, but I'll probably do that. And then I'm just gonna kind of sit comfortably in the chair, because I'm much more comfortable when I sit cross-legged than in the sort of 90-degree position. Let's see, word or phrase that describes how I'm arriving. Feel like I'm like kind of arriving and grounding as I arrive. So it feels good to be here with you all as always. And what I'm hoping to get out today's workshop, I'm really interested in hearing what you all like your experience with conflict and learning from each other today. So we've got the welcome sign coming up if I can get it. Yeah, you want to share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I am an independent mama. I am healing and growing from complex trauma. I am a lifelong learner. I graduated from Prescott College, and I am currently in their master's program for mental health counseling. So I'm hoping to practice systems trauma counseling.
Yeah, that's great. You all have all basically heard the spiel already, so I won't go through the whole thing, but basically, I grew up here and went away and have been kind of on a lifelong journey to find out how change really happens. That is definitely an ongoing path. I've learned the most, not from higher education, but from the other organizers that I've worked with. And I've been lucky to work with some truly incredible people, including Ainsley, and all of you. So I, don't pretend that I have the answers, but I think it's really important to share what I have learned and am learning with other people who want to change the world so we can work together and create stronger, more loving communities. So that's my deal.
Hey,
Do you want to read that?
Yeah. So the Changemaker workshops are monthly workshops for people who care about the world and want to learn skills to take meaningful action in our communities. The goal of these workshops is to help you develop the skills you need to build and engage with radical, resilient, connected communities and to take action on the issues that are important to you.
/ us.
Yes.
So today we're going to be talking more about how we organize and build those communities through specifically conflict resolution, and conflict resolution within our own communities is what I'd love for us to focus on today. Mary's here. Great. Yeah, so some acknowledgements and contributions. I don't know if Mary can hear us yet, but welcome, Mary. But yeah, so please consider donating to the following group today if you're in the financial position to do so. We keep these workshops free partially so that people who are able to can contribute between 25 to 100 to groups already doing this work in real time. Listed in the next slide is a group that has directly contributed to the ideas we're learning about today, often with no direct compensation for their work. So yeah, if you're privileged to live comfortably, I invite you to consider wealth redistribution as part of your contribution to the movement. So today's group is the Quad City Interfaith Council, which I believe a couple of you are actually on. The Quad City Interfaith Council strives to promote respect, understanding, cooperation, and appreciation for the many religious and faith traditions within our community, and to sponsor interfaith programs and engage in community service projects. In all our efforts, we strive to promote human dignity. And we picked them because every January they organize the Prescott MLK Peace and Justice March, and we're going to be talking a lot about Kingian nonviolence today. So to make a contribution, you can donate to their fiscal agent, which is Coalition for Compassion and Justice. I will send the link out again in an email. And under the gift designation fund, you'll click QCIC Martin Luther King Jr. Day events. So like I said, I will email out that information as well. Yeah, do you want to walk us through our agenda for today? It's kind of hard to see, but
Yeah, so we've already done the intros and welcome. Next, we'll go over the covenant and group agreements. Then we'll do 2-person breakout groups. We'll cover self-regulation. Then we'll cover the basics of nonviolent communication. We'll take a 30-minute break. Then we'll cover the 4 types of conflict from healing resistance or healing justice. And then we'll cover some conflict scenarios. We'll do a grounding exercise. And then we'll do an arts and crafts reflection before closing out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so today is a little different from our normal workshops. We have more content. Hopefully it'll feel good. We'll have enough of like a mix of discussion and content. But yeah, we really wanted to share with you some things from healing resistance and nonviolent communication that we think are awesome tools.
Hey, hey.
Yeah, so objectives for today. Have you ever been a part of a group or a relationship that was well-intentioned, but it seemed like there was always tension that was getting in the way of those relationships? Did it seem like no matter what you tried, including ignoring it, because I know I do that, that tension and conflict only got worse? Did it lead to people even leaving the relationship or group? Today will be an opportunity to explore the ways we might approach these types of interpersonal conflicts in ways that can lead to stronger relationships over time. So we invite you to notice what you're feeling as we create space together and learn from each other. What feels good, what feels challenging, what could you see bringing yourself to other spaces you are a part of. So our covenants, I love to have folks in the group read this. Patrick, do you want to read the first part? Oh, you are muted, I think.
I just got that message. We work at creating a welcoming space for all people, and we strive to center the experiences, voices, wisdom, and boundaries of the people who have experienced, shall I continue?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Who have experienced the most marginalization in our communities wherever possible, and especially when speaking about the issues that affect folks directly.
Great. Lena, you want to take the next one?
She's muted.
I am not, I am unmuted now. We work to actively unlearn and reject white supremacy, body shaming, transphobia, ableism, classism, and patriarchal behavior in all its forms, and replace it with a more loving, connected community.
Good. Mary, would you like to take the next one?
In situations where the comfort of one party would come at the expense of the safety of another party, we will always prioritize safety over comfort.
Thank you. And Molly, do you want to take this one?
When mistakes happen, we each strive to be open to difficult conversations, release defensiveness, leave space to grow, make time to reflect and learn, and focus on healing, love, and trust building.
Yeah. We believe that together we can build a compassionate community of trust, healing, and care for one another. So the full covenant is at this incredibly long link below, which I'll also share with you. So the next slide is an image, a black and white image of Mahatma Gandhi. And the quote says in black and white, "Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it." So yeah, now we're gonna get into our two-person breakouts. Welcome back. Did anyone have anything that they like took away from their conversation that they wanted to share? Yeah, I think it's important. That's a really important thing to bring up, is the sort of the role that privilege and power and difference in like positionality and experiences in life plays into you know, conflicts and things like that. I love that. Yeah, me and my roommates are planning, they just moved in, so we're planning to bake a bunch of cookies and bring them around to the neighbors, and because I'm tired of living in neighborhoods where I don't know my neighbors, you know. Like it's time for me to meet my neighbors. So
I would say that touches too on something we covered, which is the basics of having your needs met to feel safe in conflict, and making sure you have something in your stomach definitely helps.
yeah. Yeah, if you're hungry and trying to engage in conflict, it's probably going to go as well. You get someone to get angry. Oh, did it work? Okay. I'm gonna close the doors. Why is this? Well, you all know I always struggle a little with the
It's a
screen
lot on
sharing.
the screen, so.
You can just like click that.
Beautiful.
And bring you to the next thing.
So I'm wanted to talk about self-regulation so that maybe if people feel agitated, we could talk about ways to be mentally and emotionally present during conflict. So self-regulation is the use of repetitive sounds, smells, visuals, and movement, including bilateral stimulation, which we'll talk about more in a minute, to calm our bodies and minds when activated. We all self-regulate through sighing, praying, leg shaking, creating art, etc. Self-regulation is an important first step when approaching any conflict so we can be as present and grounded as possible. Our sympathetic nervous system is a network of nerves that helps our body activate its fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. And those are dependent on your abilities and your environment and the stressor, which one's activated. So when it is activated, we can feel an increase in energy, increase in heart rate, lightheadedness, light sensitivity, constipation, and our feelings will feel overwhelming. Self-regulation is vital to healthy connections and for a healthy body.
Oh, I messed up the transition. It's all good. Beautiful.
And so here are some examples. Let's see. So like I said, the basics are important: drinking water, eating, praying and meditating, journaling, moving the body like dancing. The vagus nerve goes through our throats, so humming and singing is very effective.
I know that.
Positive affirmations, running or walking, which is bilateral stimulation because you're alternating which part of your body is moving, and butterfly tapping. The emotional freedom technique, which we'll do at the end, and expressing feelings with the creation of movement or art, even listening, learning, cleaning, different breathing like the box breath. And there are innumerable more that we could discuss, but that's just for an idea.
Definitely.
What is butterfly tapping?
So that is where you'll cross your arms like this, and you just alternate your hands tapping on either your arms. If you like it more like on your chest, you can do it up here. I like it where my clavicle is. And you can go fast if you're trying to energize yourself, or you can go slower if you're trying to calm yourself down.
That's cool. I always forget about that. That's a useful one.
I think a few of these, we tried to make them accessible. A few of them would work. So, I mean, I try to keep water with me. Water is a great way to ground your body into the present moment.
Okay.
I know for like humor. So I always have music going in my head. So even in conflict or a stressful situation, I'll have something in my head, a song, and I'll kind of, you can leave the space, take a moment, go to the bathroom, and, you know, hum or sing, or, you know, box breath is really good for balancing your nervous system. So that's breathing in for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and the tapping too. I was going to show an example too of like, you can tap your toes alternatively while you're standing and sitting. And for the most part, unless you're wearing like flip-flops, that's not really noticeable if you're concerned about, you know, being seen.
Yeah, those are all good. I've also taking a break to go to the bathroom, I think, can be really useful, just to like take a breath and be by yourself. That's useful for me. Or like sometimes, you know how like people will sort of like shake their leg while they're sitting. That's also a form of self-regulating. I've heard like counting your teeth with your tongue can be like a good way. I have a game on my phone that I play sometimes that you can't like sometimes I'll do it under the table if I just need to like come down a little. That's not people get it. unfortunately.
And there's the classic anger management techniques too, counting backwards from a
Mhm.
number, using senses. So looking around, seeing what you
Yeah.
see, seeing what you hear, or hearing what you hear, smelling what you taste. That again will bring you into your body, into the present moment.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, I've started doing somatic therapy recently, which is I love somatic therapy. It's very body based and touch based, and it like use a lot of these techniques in there. And I realized like how much we're taught not to move in the society. It's like stay still, do your homework, even things like, going to the movie theater or sitting in church or whatever, like there's expectations that you don't move, you don't walk around. So like different ways that you can like do it subtly, I find helps. Sometimes if I have like intrusive thoughts, like thoughts I don't want to be thinking about that are just like circling in my mind, I can literally like, if I'm like feeling like, stressed in my heart from like thinking about those, I can literally like take that and like throw it, and it really helps. It's wild. And then the other one that I found really helpful just for getting present lately is like you take a breath like this, and then you like go like that. So it's like, and it's just like, I don't know, it really works for me. So you can try different things, find what works for you, like find what works at home. Another one is there's a couple ones I learned where you can like press really hard against the wall, like you're like with one, you're kind of got your, it's hard to do. You have so you'll like step back like that, and you'll push really hard against the wall, and then you'll like release like that, and that can release a lot of like feelings. Or there's also like if you go like really low and you go boo like really loud like that can help too. But like a lot of it I feel like is about getting vibrations through your body and like releasing things. And so
Yeah, ultimately I feel like movement can be really an important part. So you might want to be in a bathroom or a more private space for a moment just to
like
get it out,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Are there any of these like techniques that you all already use, or that you like are thinking you might try the next time you're in a stressful situation?
Or even ones you maybe already use even subconsciously, like I said,
Yeah.
sighing, shaking your leg.
Yeah, praying and stuff. Yeah, look at this resourced group.
I
Y'all are
love it.
amazing. I love that. Yeah, so the next part we're going to be talking about is nonviolent communication.
There's the book.
It's called Healing Resistance by Kazu Haga. So they say that the idea that nonviolence is about not being violent is one of the most common and dangerous misunderstandings that exists. Nonviolence is not about what not to do. It's about what you are going to do about the violence and injustice that we see in our own hearts, our homes, our neighborhoods, and society at large. So I'll read that again. Nonviolence is not about what not to do. It's about what are you going to do about the violence and injustice we see in our hearts, our homes, our neighborhoods, and society at large.
I see this like beloved community, so nonviolence is that ideal,
Yeah, of like an inclusive, loving, connected, beloved community. Love that. All right, let's take it away, Ainsley.
Yay. So there is the basics of nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg that I was very inspired by. And so these are the basics that he's laid out and shared. But this is global. So we all have basic needs. The first includes autonomy, which is the freedom to choose our future. We also have the physical nurturance, so air, food, water, and shelter. The celebration of life and loss. Play, integrity, including creativity and authenticity. Spiritual communion, including inspiration and harmony. Interdependence, including safety, acceptance, consideration, and appreciation. So when our needs are not met, we can feel activated. How we can engage with nonviolent communication, here's just 4 basic steps. The first one is recognizing activation and shifting to observing your feelings and your thoughts. Then working on identifying and expressing those feelings. Biggest part here is connecting those feelings to the unmet need. And then you can either fulfill the need yourself or specifically request someone help fulfill that need.
And we'll bring these back, so don't worry if you didn't get them all at once.
So yes, this is directly from the book. So this is the nonviolent communication process. I like it because it covers both persons, or if there's 2 people, both sides of the conversation. And as we saw here, it goes over the observations, the feelings, the needs, and the requests. So specific statements would be, when I see or hear this, I feel this because I need or I value this. Would you be willing to do this?
That's great. And then receiving that can be like what you observe that does not contribute to your well-being. So when you see or hear this thing, so like offering empathy, how you feel, I'm hearing that you feel this way about this. And you're telling me that that's because you need or value this thing. Would you like me to do such and such in response? Do those sort of basics make sense to folks? We'll explore them a little deeper in the next slides. So we came up with some examples for you all. So this is the first example. This is person 1. So we're going to set up a scenario and we're going to kind of walk through how you might use nonviolent communication in this. I'm going to be person 1 and you'll be person 2. Maybe we could even act this out, or we'll just read through it. Anyways, so I'm talking to someone and they use the wrong pronouns to refer to me. So step 1 is to recognize activation and shift to observing. So, okay, that made me feel something. So I'm going to try and like just notice what I'm feeling right now.
Like, is my heart racing? Am I not breathing?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So stopping, checking in with your body and emotions. Your chest may feel tight. Your heart may be racing. Oh, you just said that. Yeah, I apologize. So step 2 is identifying and expressing those feelings. So, okay. All right. So I'm noticing that I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. Feeling lots of complex emotions. Maybe there's some emotions I can't even name, but I feel like, oh, my chest is tight when this happens. So the next step is to connect those feelings to my unmet needs. So now I'm exploring that hurt. I'm like, okay, that sadness, that anger, and I'm recognizing that those emotions are an expression of my need for acceptance, consideration, love, and expression, that I feel that by someone using the wrong pronouns to refer to me, that they are not meeting those needs of acceptance, consideration, love, and expression. So then step 4 is going to be to try and fulfill that need, or specifically request that someone helps me to fulfill that need. So I can start by self-regulating, which we have already practiced because we are resourced. So I might take a deep breath. I might tap. I might excuse myself and go sing in the bathroom, as one does. I might remind myself of positive affirmations, like, okay, like who I am is important, whatever it is. And then I can find the balance between self-advocacy and reaching out for support. So I may want to address it in the moment. I may need to wait for that, but I can either reach out to a friend to share how I'm feeling. I may even ask them to advocate for me, speak directly with the person who misgendered me. Misgendered meaning using the incorrect pronouns or a name that does not reflect one's gender. Or I can speak directly to the person about what happened once I've gone through these steps. All right, example of nonviolent communication, person number 2.
So on my end, someone lets me know that I've misgendered them and how it made them feel and requests that I use the correct pronouns. So in that moment, I recognize the ways I'm activated and I shift to observing. So stopping and checking in with my body and my emotions. My chest may also feel tight. My heart may be racing as well. I need to identify my feelings and express them. So I observe I might be feeling attacked. I might be feeling confused, hurt, angry, shameful. Like Anna said, a mixture of these. And then I have to connect my feelings to my unmet need. So I explore my defensiveness, confusion, hurt, anger, and shame. I recognize these emotions as an expression of my need for emotional safety and reassurance. So being held in community, yeah. So then I fulfill my need, or specifically request someone to help fulfill my need by self-regulating, taking a deep breath, tapping, singing, using positive affirmations to calm my system and lower my defensiveness and my hurt and anger and confusion and shame. So I can the other person's feelings. So this self-regulation allows me to be open and then empathetic and receive the other person's feelings and needs.
Yeah. So this is an example of two people who are both engaging in nonviolent communication, and a possible outcome from both of us communicating with each other in this way would be,
I might be able to recognize that my actions caused another person to feel hurt and not seen. I might be able to recognize that my defensiveness, confusion, hurt, anger, and shame are not a real threat to my safety or my needs. I could apologize for misgendering person one. I can go home and learn more about trans, non-binary issues and gender expression and sexual orientation. And yeah, I could use the next opportunity that I see person one to use the correct pronouns and in an attempt to repair that relationship.
So in response to this, I might feel validated and seen by person two. I might feel that my needs were heard.
Sorry.
And that, in fact, it is safe to express those feelings and needs with person two because they have shown that they care about me, they care about my feelings, they care about my needs, and they are willing to listen and try to meet those in relationship with me. So the rupture in that relationship caused by using the wrong pronouns has now become a process of healing. And as a result, our relationship is stronger and there is more trust between us. So this can be, like a really great way when there is conflict, when something comes up, to repair that and to actually come out stronger and have stronger relationships on the other end of that. Yeah. So for discussions, I am, let's see, I would like to see my, no, come back. Okay. Okay, so for discussions, I'm going to break us out into groups of about 3 or 4. Is that right? Yeah. So let me just get a minute to get those breakout groups going. So question 1, which I'll also put in the chat, will be, what are your initial reactions to these slides about nonviolent communication? And question 2 is, if you think that nonviolent communication is a good foundation for approaching conflict, what are some strategies you might try to introduce to groups or individuals you're connected with who might not be familiar with those ideas?
Yeah, so I think my first thought is based on kind of what we had talked about. Not everyone will be able or resourced or knowledgeable enough to engage in nonviolent communication. And I think that is when a more internalized process may be more beneficial and successful. So that's my first thought is, if someone's too activated, they don't have control of their emotions, they can't regulate, might not be the time, and, might not be the space to do it. Maybe when they're in a regulated space, then you can. For some
Yeah.
people, they might be avoidant, so they might just keep avoiding you, and you can't force someone to face a conflict. So
Yeah.
and that I would just say patience. If they care enough about the conflict, they'll come towards it.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Patrick. Like there's so many different factors that play into a situation like this. Like, for example, are these two people friends? Did they just meet? Like what kind of relationship is between them? Is there a power dynamic at play? Different things like that can affect how and if you use this process with the other person in the moment or later or not at all. There's this quote, I actually have it at the very end of here that I really like. There's this quote by Prentice Hemhill. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. So I'll read that again. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. So for example, if this person who misgendered the other person has a pattern of doing it, you've already talked to them before and they continue to do it, then you may decide, you know what, like I need to have a little distance between this person. They're not listening to me and my needs in the way that I need them to. And that, that is how that goes. Or you might, ask some like a mutual friend who is an ally to like, maybe have a conversation with that person on your behalf. I don't know. Does that answer your question? I feel like we just added
Well, I was
more
going to say
questions.
too, part of nonviolence is not that you're never violent. And so as you're mentioning, if someone is engaging and hurting people and not wanting to be held accountable, not apologizing, then in nonviolence, it is a practice to create space until that person's willing to come and be in relationship, which includes accountability.
Yeah.
I think part of the acceptance
Mm.
aspect of accepting the conflict, accepting the person for where they're at and accepting us for where we're at.
Yeah.
That's what I heard when you shared your piece on not taking it personally.
Yeah. And I think something that came up in our last workshop on talking to people you really don't agree with is that part about like you say, like accepting that's where they are. I can't change where they're coming from. And I can still share how I feel about an issue. And I can still because that's really the only truth we can speak to, right? Is our own truth and our own experiences. Yeah, I would say culturally something, at least that I have been taught, in school and in different dynamics and relationships with people, is that you always like I feel like we're taught implicitly or explicitly, like we have to come at everything from like a logic perspective or like like these are the facts. And like, well, a lot of times those facts are really your feelings,
Yeah, there's like logic is more superior than feelings. And it's actually your thoughts and feelings are very enmeshed.
Yeah. And also like, I think that sometimes by like sometimes I'll watch my extended family and how they communicate with each other, and they communicate with like fact-based language, sort of like, well, you're doing this and this is what's happening and it's wrong, whereas sometimes I wonder if they had instead approached like with like, when you do this it makes me feel this way, whether like there would be like a better outcome, because I think that what happens is there's a defensiveness, right, that happens there.
And when we share our feelings, we're being vulnerable, which helps create that connection, whether you're being attacked or whether you're initiating the conflict. I feel like in our culture too, maybe we've been conditioned to be not upset people, to not want to say things like that. And I think it's important that we feel free to express ourselves. And as you're saying, Peter, not be afraid of how it's going to be received, because we can't control that.
Right. Yeah. And I think another part of that is also like accepting that we may be wrong, and not even just that, but like we may both be right. Like I think we also have this idea of like there's one right way to do things, and like that's, in my experience, not usually the case. And I think sometimes when we get trapped in that, especially in organizing spaces, I have seen conversations like reach a point where it's like we all have the same, well, we're going to talk more about this later and when we talk about types of conflict, but we all have the same goal, but we get so caught up in like, oh, well, do we do a protest, or do we like try and lobby like city council members, or do we, you know, become a nonprofit and apply for grants, or whatever it is. Like, we get so caught up in that sometimes nothing happens at all, you know. Or like, I don't know if you all have kept up with the young climate change activists in recent weeks who have gone to museums and they've thrown like soup and food onto famous paintings. And there's been a lot of and then like they'll like give a speech basically about like climate change, and there's been a lot of like critique on that from both sides, including, you know, like environment people who like care about the environment and really see the need for radical change. A lot of people have been like, oh, well, that's performative. Well, what are they really getting done? And someone I was following on Instagram was like, listen, like there's not one right way to do climate action. And like, guess what? Like these kids doing this means that climate change has been in the news like regularly for multiple cycles for the first time in a very long time, you know? And so yeah.
Is it Clementine Morgan.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
love Clementine Morgan. Big fan. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we take our break? All right, well, shall we get started? Cool.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Our beautiful little 30-minute break screen. So this quote, hold on, give me just a second to my usual Zoom technology struggles. Okay. So it says, within every conflict, there is an opportunity to find connection with one another. It's black and white on a sort of surrounded by a wreath of kind of drawn that's from marriedand.com. And it was the closest quote I could find to something a teacher of mine, I don't even remember which teacher, said once, which was basically that like every conflict is an opportunity to build trust and to strengthen the relationships, which is essentially what this is saying.
Yeah.
Like that. So to share with you all a little bit about some wisdom from Healing Resistance. You want to show them the book again?
I can't.
Yeah, there you go. Da-da-da-da! Healing Resistance by Kazuhaga. And I meant to look up the pronunciation, so hopefully I am saying it right. So according to author, activist, and Kingian nonviolence scholar Kazuhaga, conflict and rupture is a natural part of the relationship. What we're learning is the skill of repair at least 50% of the time. Kingian nonviolence is a philosophy or nonviolent conflict reconciliation in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the organizing strategies of the civil rights movement. And that's from the, it's called East Point Academy, right? Website.
Sure, yeah.
The organization that Haga is involved with. So from Healing Resistance, some things to keep in mind. Whenever we imply that someone is wrong or bad, what we're really saying is that they are not acting in harmony with our needs. So that's similar to what we were talking about before. And we can practice instead. I would like you to tell me if there is some other way of meeting your needs that would not hurt me. Put this a little closer, I think. So there's 4 types of conflict from Healing Resistance. These are, there's 4 major types of conflict as understood within the framework of Kingian nonviolence. If you can understand what type of conflict you're engaged in, then that gives you information about how to move through it. So this is not an exhaustive list, nor are these conflicts mutually exclusive to each other, so that you can have 2 or more types of the same conflict in any conflict when you're identifying it. However, it can be a useful framework to identify the real issues at hand and move then towards resolution and repair. So the first type of conflict is called the pathway conflict. This is when you have the same overall goals, but you have different ways of reaching them. So an example of this is this is a small example. Pat and Alex want to go to the store, but Pat wants to walk and Alex wants to ride the bike. So they have the same goal to go to the store, but they have different ways of wanting to reach the store. So yeah, I see Patrick laughing. This is exactly what we were talking about before. So questions to ask: is the path to get to the goal, has that become more important than the goal itself? And recognizing when that is the case. So the solution when that happens then is, from the quote from the book, is the most important thing you can do is to remember that you're trying to get to the same place. That's the basis from which you can solve that conflict. The second type of conflict is the mutually exclusive conflict. That's when you have different goals, but you're choosing to function together. So an example could be, Pat and Alex may assume that they both want to go to the store, but maybe Pat's really just in it for the walk and the store isn't as important. So questions to ask here: am I assuming that since I'm on the same team as someone, I have the same goals as them? It's really important to name when we have different goals so that we can start on the same page. Because if we understand that, we're in this together, but we have different goals, and that will change how we interact with each other, hopefully for the better. Questions to ask. Another one is, am I assuming that because we have different goals, these goals are mutually exclusive? So it could be, Alex could see that Pat wants to walk to the store, or they want to walk, and they could see that as like a different goal than going to the store, or they could both reconcile and be like, well, actually we both want to go to the store. So, I want to go on a walk. Going on a walk is a way to get to the store. So they're not mutually exclusive goals, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you. So a quote from the book: there are often ways of working together so that even with different goals, we can both actually get closer to our goals than if we'd worked independently. This one I think is really, really critical for organizing work. Yeah, because and especially, so I have lots of thoughts on that. But I think that like organizations, especially nonprofits, like you're literally competing for the same grants. We can place ourselves or be placed in situations where we're in competition with each other rather than seeing the ways that we can work together. And I think especially in rural communities where we have sort of a smaller pool of like organizers and like activists to pull from, I think it's really important for us to be able to reach across to organizations that we may not even have exactly the same values as, but like we're still pushing in the same direction. And I know, Patrick, a lot about that from doing organizing in this town, and I'm sure Molly and other folks do as well. So solution: finding mutual benefit. So that's finding the ways that we can each help each other reach our goals, even if they're different. The third one, distributive conflict, the perception that there's not enough resources to go around. I would say arguably in organizations, I don't know if this is your experience, this is one of the ones that I come across the most.
I mean, we're facing oppression, and oppression is the unequal distribution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for example, we're moving away from the store and getting a little bigger here. An example is schools in low-income neighborhoods not having enough resources to go around is a real source of conflict. But if the US government spent less on going war, for example, perhaps there would be enough to go around to all of the schools. So there's the perception that there's not enough money because what you see in the budget is like, oh, we don't have enough money for education. But like, well, why is that all that we have in the budget? So sort of getting a little bit out of that.
Yeah, looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. The questions to ask: are there actually not enough resources, or is it just my perception that makes me think that there is a scarcity of resources? So this is also sometimes called scarcity mentality. And scarcity mentality is like, once you learn how to recognize this, you're going to see it everywhere. It is a very useful tool that a lot of powerful people, governments, corporations, and organizations at all levels, really, like I said, I see this a lot, often used to make us think that we have to hoard resources and create imbalances of power in order to have enough for ourselves and the people that we care about. So one example of the way that like scarcity mentality impacts things that you might not even think directly have anything to do with like resources is the way we talk about immigration in the United States. There is the perception that there's not enough jobs to go around, there's not enough resources to go around in our country, and that therefore we shouldn't be allowing more people, and specifically more poor people, because I think that is the implication in a lot of those conversations into our country.
Certainly.
I'm not going to go on an immigration rant right now. We're just going to leave it at that. But yeah, call me later if you want me to talk your ear off for 2 hours.
You want to rant?
Yeah. So if I changed my mentality, another question, if I changed my mentality, would I be able to find creative ways to find more resources? So sort of, and this is almost like the opposite of a scarcity mentality is an abundance mentality. So if I start from the assumption that there is enough for everyone, even if that requires some sacrifices for people, right? Because when we say there's enough for everyone, we're talking about basic needs, right? We're not talking about like everyone gets to have like a 13-room mansion, with a like huge lawn and all those. That's not sustainable for everyone in the world to have. But we certainly have enough resources for everyone to have food, water, education, health, and general well-being. And that's not just humans, right? We have enough for our environment and our world to survive. So another question to ask there, like we just said, what is enough, right? How do we define enough? I think this is something going back to sort of our covenant when we're talking about comfort versus safety. For those of us who have experienced a lot of privilege in our lives, sometimes if something feels uncomfortable, for example, like, I don't know, if there were restrictions on how often I could drive my car, right? That would feel like, oh, well, like that, I don't have enough there. I don't have like what I need or what I think I need, when really that's a want, that's a desire, that's something that we've gotten used to, right? That's not the best example, but hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. So I think it's really important for us to get honest with ourselves about what is enough. So the solution to a distributive conflict is another quote from the book. We can look at the ways that the resources are currently being distributed to see if there is a more equitable distribution that would solve the problem. I'll read that again. So we can look at the ways that the resources are currently being distributed to see if there is a more equitable distribution that would solve the problem. So again, I see this on a lot of different levels, and I think it's one of the things that's sort of at the core of a lot of our like issues of oppression. And I think there's ways that sometimes organizations can reproduce these like scarcity mentalities and thoughts about like there isn't enough for everyone within our own organizations, even when we're trying to actively disrupt those ideas. With sort of the assumptions we make about what enough is, who gets enough, things like that. That's another thing. If you ever want me to talk your ear off for, I would say 4 hours about nonprofits. Got you. So the last conflict is the values conflict. This is when we have different values and different visions. So according to the book, they say this is the most common type of conflict, and that is because there are elements of the values conflict in all forms of conflict. So for example, examples of values conflicts are wars over religion, abortion, gun ownership, healthcare. Those are sort of like the really trigger values, right? But there can be others, less visible values that will impact things. Like, for example, Pat and Alex wanting to go to the store. Pat values walking while Alex values going to the store, so that's technically also a values conflict. Since values conflicts are so emotionally charged, it's also really important to remember that every values conflict also contains elements of one of the other 3 types of conflict. So both things are true. So questions to ask ourselves: would framing this values conflict instead as a pathway conflict, a mutually exclusive conflict, or a distributive conflict make it easier to resolve if we could walk it back to that place? Another question to ask, are there ways that we can resolve this conflict without agreeing on the same values? So again, coming back to those sort of organizing things that we have to think about. So solution to a values conflict, most people's values are not easily swayed, as we talked about earlier. So we can try to approach each other with curiosity and openness rather than trying to reach consensus or getting defensive. Because oftentimes with a conflict, we may not reach consensus. We may not end or resolve the conflict in a way where everyone agrees, and that's okay sometimes. So it may be easier to move through the conflict and have real dialogue if we focus on the tools we've learned to navigate through the other 3 types of conflict rather than exclusively on our difference in values. So an example, for example, this is from the book. Both proponents and opponents of gun control, so people who are pro and anti-gun control, may hold the belief that may hold those beliefs, maybe pro-guns or anti-guns, because their goal is to keep their families safe. So this makes the values conflict also a pathway conflict, i.e. same goal, different paths. And that can start us on a path to finding common ground, as we've been talking about a lot today. Some other wisdom from Healing Resistance. Some tools for resolving conflict from Healing Resistance. Apologizing, taking responsibility, understanding impact, sharing remorse, and attempting to make amends. Collaborating and reflecting on the shared goals. Strategizing to meet everyone's needs. And an important part of strategizing to meet everyone's needs is also accommodating when necessary to meet everyone's needs. So this is also something we can, that we've sort of talked about in the disability justice workshops that we did. Strategizing to meet everyone's needs really does meet everyone, meaning everyone's needs, right? And sometimes that can mean, inconvenience or discomfort for some folks in order to provide safety and accessibility for other folks, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm excited about this. So I am going to break us up into, I guess we'll do 2 groups. Yeah, we'll do 2 groups. So I'm going to hand each group a different scenario. And by hand, I mean, I'm going to put it in the chat. So let's see, how do I want to do this?
Because I think when you put them into groups, maybe the old chat isn't available.
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think you can still see it though, right? But not if you do it before. Okay. It's all good. Let's see. So I want to stop share. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hand each group a different scenario. So 2 different scenarios. Your job in the group is to identify the types of conflict that are present in the scenario and envision a possible solution based on the tools we've learned about nonviolent communication and the 4 types of conflict. So here you can see I have the 4 types of conflict written out and the basics of nonviolent communication, sort of the summaries of those written out. So I'm going to put those in the chat. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen with you all. So our goal is to identify what kind of conflicts are in here, and then come up with a solution based on our nonviolent communication. And I think Ainsley and I will basically just let you all chat amongst yourself unless you have any specific questions for us. Okay. I will read this to you all though. Unless, does someone else want to read it?
You're good.
All right, I will read it. Great. So this is scenario B. Sunny and John. A nonprofit organization has received a $100,000 grant to do a year-long COVID education outreach and reach 5,000 members of their community. Any money not spent on the program can be used however the organization sees fit. The organization estimates that they'll need to hire 3 part-time interns working at 10 hours a week to reach this many people, and will have minimal to no other program costs. This is reading like a math question. The organization plans to pay the interns $17 an hour since it is not a full-time job, and they want to spend the rest of the money on their mutual aid program, buying food and diapers for the organization's low-income clients. Most of the other 8 full-time employees make about $25 an hour. John, the organization's executive director, thinks that paying the interns $17 an hour is fair, since most internships in the area are unpaid, and all the interns are either still in college or never got their bachelor's degree, so are not as qualified as the other staff members who are all college educated. John thinks it's important to give to the less fortunate and is proud of the sacrifices he has made for the sake of the organization's low-income clients. He regularly donates the majority of his salary back to the organization because he is able to live comfortably sharing his spouse's income. Sunny is a staff member helping to organize the COVID education outreach program. They have worked closely with the college and high school interns who help out at the organization, and they know that many of the interns are first-generation college students, or never went to college, who are trying to support their families on top of juggling schoolwork and internships. Sunny is advocating for the interns to get paid at least $25 an hour, the same as the rest of the staff. The estimated cost of living in the area for one person to make ends meet while working full-time is about $28 an hour, and Sunny does okay, but sometimes worries about money. They make the argument that since staff is already getting underpaid relative to the living wage, and since there is more money in the grant, the interns should at least get paid what the rest of staff is already getting paid. They think that the mutual aid project is important, but that taking care of the new staff is equally important. All right, take it away, folks. So the first question is, what kind of conflict would you say that this is? Do you all want me to switch to the screen that shows the types of conflict?
Yes.
So here are the 4 types of conflict. So there's pathway conflict, which is where you have the same overall goals, but different ways of reaching them. There's mutually exclusive conflict, different goals choosing to function together. Distributive conflict, the perception that there's not enough resources to go around. And values conflict, different values, different visions. Yeah, so let's say that John and Sunny are in a meeting together and this issue comes up. So how would Sunny go through the basics of nonviolent communication to bring up how they felt about the issue? If anyone wants to take a stab at it, being Sunny. Yeah. So how would they do the fulfill the need or specifically request someone help fulfill the need? How might they phrase that? And anyone can take a stab at it if they want.
Read the question again, please.
So the last step for the basics of nonviolent communication, after we've recognized activation, shifting to observing, identifying and expressing our feelings, connecting our feelings to our unmet needs, the last step is to fulfill that need or specifically request someone help fulfill the need. So how might Sunny do that last step? Fulfill the need or specifically request someone help fulfill the need. Great. So Sunny is the helping to run this program and is talking to their boss, the executive director, John. So how might they phrase this in this meeting with John, these issues?
Yeah, I think that touches on something very important, which is for some people, whether or not they accept the job is whether or not that job can sustain them. And so a real conversation might include, at this point, I'm having to look at other jobs because I can't see myself continuing to live off of this wage. But I love this job, so I'm feeling conflicted. So again, sharing those feelings of like, I'm feeling conflicted because I'm trying to get this need met to cover my expenses. Can you help me out with this, you know?
Yeah, so this is one we were talking about values. This is one where, because we didn't really talk about what kind of nonprofit this was. We know that it's a nonprofit that tries to help low-income people, right? That's all we really know about the nonprofit. But this could be an opportunity where actually it's a values conflict in some ways, but there are also shared values. So for example, Sunny could be like, you know, we both really care about people being able to meet their needs in this world. And here are the numbers about living wage in this area. And so I see that we have enough money in the grant to pay people this amount. Can we pay people this amount? And potentially it could even turn into a larger conversation, which would likely require some more like organizing of coworkers, of being like, listen, we don't have like restrictions on the rest of these funds. We actually have enough to pay everyone in the organization a living wage for the year, so can we prioritize that? And we'll even have a little bit left over for the mutual aid fund. But our values are to lift people out of poverty, or whatever it is. Our values are to make sure people are able to meet their basic needs. And this is one way where internally we can start with our own organization, meeting our own needs. Yeah, so this example is, sorry, did anyone have other thoughts on that before I? Right. Okay, well, so a little backstory. This is actually based on a real situation that I had at my last job. We got a huge grant for COVID outreach. That was the only reason COVID was really in there. And we hired on some new interns, and I happened to be able to be in those meetings because I was the social services coordinator at the time. And they mentioned that they were going to be paying the interns $17 an hour. And I was like, excuse me? That was in the Bay Area, and like 25, which is what most people were getting paid at the organization, was like barely cutting it for a lot of people if you didn't have a good deal on rent. And so I actually advocated and kind of came at it from sort of a values and perhaps a touch of shame. Shame can be a useful tool sometimes. And yeah, we ended up paying the interns $25 an hour. So
Ooh.
there we go. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you all. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think the distributive conflict is, for me, I found it to be one of the hardest ones to address within organizational spaces, because of a lot of reasons. I think for one thing, there's a lot of assumptions made around resources and scarcity and things like that. Like at my last job, it's sort of like we had, for example, a diversity and equity and inclusion group, right? An anti-racist group. And we were talking a lot about like microaggressions and things like that, but we weren't really addressing the issues of like, listen, like this is an issue of equity if we're not getting paid enough to like survive in this area, and like, what does it look like for our organizations to become microcosms of the rest of the world, right? But when you're coming at it from the perspective of like, especially if you're like the one who's raising money, right? And you're like, oh my God, like we've tried to get all these grants. This is all we've been able to get. And like, we have to meet all these numbers for these grants. And it's like, we just can't afford to pay people more. It can be hard to bridge that gap sometimes, especially because when money involved, there is often also a power dynamic involved. So, yeah, it's the most difficult ones, but I think it's one of the most important ones to find solutions to.
Wow. Truly.
Yeah.
Thought.
Go ahead. Here we go.
So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it is similar to the butterfly hug, where it's has to do with tapping. And there's several different ways we can do this. I'll go through once and you can go through with me once. And then if you prefer just to tap in one area, that's fine. You can tap like this with your hands on either side of you. You could cross your hands and tap if that feels better. So as the image shows, we're going to go from top to bottom. So I'll show you first and then we can do it together. I like to do 4 taps. Again, you can do as many taps really as you like. You can do it at the speed that you'd like as well. So I'm going to start with my head.
So tapping with both hands on the top of your head.
And then you do the eyebrows.
Eyebrows.
Outside of the eyes. Under the eyes. Over the chin. Under the chin. On the collarbone. on your side, under your armpits, and then on either side of your side hand. I don't know what you'd call that.
Yeah,
but
it's like
the side
the-
of your hand.
outside of your palm, I guess.
And so, as I said, if there's a specific spot that feels best for you that you'd like to continue tapping, or if you want to keep tapping just down your body, I just have like a 2.5-minute meditation that we can tap to.
Cool.
A lot of times when you tap, especially with the emotional freedom technique, you're tapping and you're saying statements, positive affirmations like I am safe, everything's okay, regrounding you in the present moment, because we can have narratives when we're activated that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah. Could we go through it? Maybe like 2 more times guided.
Sure. Yeah.
So we start tapping the top of the head, eyebrow, side of the eyes, under the eyes, under the nose, chin, collarbone, under the arms, and then the sides of your palms. Wow. Okay. Okay.
Winter. Mother Nature is our ally. Her beauty and sustenance supports our lives as she teaches us how to remain in balance through the seasons. Winter is a time to journey inward, to slow down and hibernate. Short daylight hours indicate the need to become comfortable with inner and outer darkness, to understand what prevents dreams from being fulfilled. While barren trees sleep, evergreens mirror our connection to earth, which remains strong and alive. Transformation leads to an awakening of the soul. And that which is transformed in winter opens space for something new to be born in the spring. You are transforming.
So that was an example of self-regulating you can do on your own.
I'm curious how everyone's feeling.
So this is where we usually do our 5 minutes of arts and crafts. I just like us to take a moment to write down or create an image of like something that you're taking away from today's workshop and bringing with you, in this case, out of Zoom world into the quote unquote real world. And yeah, I have a vision of us like creating something beautiful either in our minds or physically to like put up and remember in our, spaces about the space. And but you can also just jot something down or take a mental note and be curious about what people are taking away. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and feel free to popcorn out once you've had a moment. I can share mine. How to make conflict less stressful, because as I was sharing at the beginning,
Oh
that
my.
whole thing. So I drew lots of flowers and hearts and things on here. Said 1, ground, self-regulate. I think that's a step I'm often missing. 2, approach with curiosity. What am I feeling? What dynamics and context are present in the space? 3, seek to understand. What kind of conflict is this? What is the other's perspective? And then 4, take the viewpoint that conflict is an opportunity to deepen relationship. And 5, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously, from Prentice Hemphill, because sometimes we still need boundaries.
Amen, sister.
That stuck with me too.
I think my main takeaway was just, yeah, that what is enough, and learning how we strategize to meet everyone's needs. So I like little doodles. That's my
Cute.
doodle so far
I love that.
of
It's
like the
got-
nonviolent process. So like, you know, like regulating, trying to find safety, curiosity, you know, having curiosity and asking questions, expressing feelings, and then meeting your own needs while also asking.
I could never do that. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's got like a little like dotted kind of sunflowery looking thing, kind of this like cool yellow squiggle, some arrows with question marks, a question mark with little drops of water, and then purple swirls at the bottom. I love that.
Ooh, thank you for that description. Thank you. Really,
Art and poetry.
yeah.
Hey, before we close, could we do something where we each share like a blessing that we want to bestow on the rest of the group after we leave Zoom? I like that. My blessing is more of a feeling. But I guess you could, if you wanted to use technical terms, I would say my blessing is a regulated nervous system. I would that sounds less like mystical though. But I would bless you with feeling like grounded and at peace in your body, and like that sort of like that feeling of like hot cocoa by a fireplace, or like drinking tea, or resting in nature on a sunny day. That's what I would bless you all with.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would bless you all with healing and growth. Healing and growth are something that inspire me very much. So.
Indeed.
I love that. I don't know if I've ever been blessed with darkness before, but I really like that as a concept.
Yeah.
So for our closing, I found a Shel Silverstein poem.
Yes.
You who may not be familiar, Shel Silverstein was a very popular poet, mostly children's poet when I was growing up. Still is pretty popular, I'd say. So it's a light purple background with 2 messily drawn children hugging and smiling. The poem says, hug of war. I will not play at tug of war. I'd rather play at hug of war, where everyone hugs instead of tugs, where everyone giggles and rolls on the rugs, where everyone kisses and everyone grins, and everyone cuddles and everyone wins.
Good old Shel.
On that note, go in peace. I will share with you all the resources we talked about today in the email.
Scream. It's not.
Like a round of applause for Ainsley. Thank you so much for.
Yes, indeed.
Wasn't she great? She'll be back
Please come again.
part 2.
She will come again. Yeah.
So I think we're doing it first Thursday again of the month, right?
Cool.
Yes. Yeah. So same time next month.
Hey,
No, thank
See you all then.
thank you. Good night.
Love
Bye.
you.
Love you too.